we'll be all in. I would anticipate we'll be all in. And yes, I would say that you will see us this coming year not building for the future is the best way I don't say it. And that ought to answer a lot of questions.
The Dallas Cowboys are a team this offseason that have gotten a ton of scrutiny due to the lack of roster moves to get over the hump after yet another disappointing year. And it's starting to appear that next year could really decide the near future for this team, as the head coach and quarterback are on the last year of their contracts. And there has been some discussions that if the Cowboys do struggle next year and potentially not even make the playoffs, maybe Jerry Jones elects to go in a mini rebuild, getting a new head coach, maybe drafting a quarterback early in the draft. There is a lot on the line for the Cowboys in 2024. But I want to quickly talk about the Cowboys season last year because they really let me down last season. For the first time in many years, I actually had a lot of faith in this Cowboys team and actually picked them to be my sleeper Super Bowl team and a true contender in the NFC. I loved a lot of the key veteran moves they made in the offseason, getting players like Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore to help them get over the hump. And for much of the season, the Cowboys did look like a true contender in the conference. They started off 10-3 and were blowing teams out, it felt like, every single week. Once December rolled around, we get a little bit of a hint of the traditional Dallas Cowboys just kind of choking towards the end of the season, losing back-to-back weeks against the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins, but they closed the season winning 2 straight games against the Detroit Lions and their rival, the Washington Commanders, ending with a record of again 12-5 for the 3rd straight season, and also gaining the number 2 seed in the NFC playoffs. But what would transpire in the opening wildcard round against the Green Bay Packers would be one of the most shocking playoff games in recent memory. The Cowboys got absolutely destroyed, losing 48-32 on their home turf. The defense got absolutely exposed. Jordan Love almost had a perfect game in his first ever postseason start. Aaron Jones rushed for over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns himself. And Dak Prescott did not perform well early in the game as well, throwing 2 interceptions, including a pick 6 to Darnell Savage. So in a game where the Cowboys were favored to win by more than a touchdown, and in a venue the Cowboys were undefeated in during the regular season, to be the first number 2 seed to lose to a 7 seed was absolutely stunning. And honestly, I can't describe what happened better than just saying the Cowboys pulled a Cowboys. Another great regular season amounted to nothing. So Dallas entered yet another offseason with a lot of questions on how they're going to make the NFC Championship game for the first time since 1995. And from the intro of Jerry Jones I showed in this video, there was some early optimism that maybe finally the Cowboys will make some big swings. But no, the complete opposite happened, and I don't think a singular team in the NFL made less moves this offseason than the Dallas Cowboys. Eric Kendricks, a linebacker from the Los Angeles Chargers, on a 1-year deal, and running back Royce Freeman, who's probably going to be the 3rd string or 4th string running back this season. They also did decide after the draft to bring back running back Ezekiel Elliott on a 1-year deal worth $3 million. But that was it. That was the only 3 free agent acquisitions the Cowboys brought to their roster. And if you look at the players that they lost, it makes it that much worse. Future Hall of Famer Tyron Smith, running back Tony Pollard, defensive end Dorrance Armstrong, offensive center Tyler Biadasz, defensive end Dante Fowler, defensive tackle Neville Gallimore, cornerback Noah Igbenogany, and another defensive tackle in Jonathan Hankins. Michael Gallup was also cut, and linebacker Leighton Vander Esch retired. Now, to be fair, some of these moves I do understand. Tyron Smith has not played a full healthy season in multiple years now, so not wanting to pay him $15+ million a season I can understand. But they lost a lot of depth on the defensive line and 2 starters who started all 17 games for them on offense last year. And I didn't even mention Stephon Gilmore, who the team has not re-signed to a contract yet. So when you take all of that into account and you realize that the Cowboys lost in the first round of the playoffs last year, it's unarguable that this roster is less talented than the one last year that didn't even make it super far. So what I'm trying to understand, and many people who are criticizing the Cowboys offseason, is really what is the plan and what are they trying to accomplish this season? I will say in the NFL draft, I was a pretty big fan of what the Cowboys did. After trading back in the draft and getting some more capital with the Detroit Lions, they selected their Tyron Smith replacement in Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. Guyton was a very intriguing prospect during the draft process. He's a very raw player, only started 15 games at Oklahoma, but he has one of the highest ceilings for any offensive lineman in this draft class. He stands at 6'8" and 322 pounds and ran a 5.19 40-yard dash, so his size and athleticism is absolutely unbelievable. And the Dallas Cowboys have routinely been one of the best teams in the league at developing offensive linemen, so I would bet on Guyton becoming a really good player in a couple of years. You go to the second round and the Cowboys add yet another trench player in Marshawn Nealon out of Western Michigan, and he was the guy that really rose up draft boards during the draft process. And as I already mentioned, with a lot of the defensive line depth the Cowboys lost in free agency, agency, Nealon is going to step in right away and help contribute to that pass rushing unit. And with their first third-round pick they acquired from the Detroit Lions, they selected Cooper Beebe, a guard from Kansas State, once again helping out their offensive line. And Beebe, I think, is going to be a really good player from day one. It's to be seen if Beebe will start in year number 1 or just serve as a depth piece. Really, outside of the center position, the Cowboys are locked in with their starters, but the only position he did not play at Kansas State was the center spot. So I don't know if the Cowboys will elect to start him there. So at the very least, in year number 1, he will be a fantastic backup and then somebody that can take over for Zach Martin, who potentially could be leaving after this season. So I think the first 3 picks for the Cowboys could end up being really good players down the line. But in terms of just next season, I don't know how much any of these players really move the needle. So again, it goes back to the theme of this video. What are the Cowboys really trying to accomplish this upcoming season? Obviously, there's still numerous star players across this roster, so I don't see the Cowboys being a bad team next year. I mean, they still have Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence on the defensive line. Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs will be back from his ACL injury. You go to the offense, and one of the best receivers in football in CeeDee Lamb. Jake Ferguson really broke out last year, had a career year. And quarterback Dak Prescott, I think he might have had the best season of his career last year. Almost a 70% completion percentage, over 4,500 yards, 36 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. And he was an MVP candidate up until the last couple of weeks of the regular season. And he's going to be super motivated to follow that season up with another really good one, because if the Cowboys organization does not extend him before the season starts, there is a chance that he could hit the open market in free agency in 2025. And that's been one of the bigger debates this offseason amidst all of the new quarterback contracts. If the Cowboys should sign Dak Prescott to north of $60 million or not. If I'm honest, I've been on the side of not extending Dak before the season begins. I think Dak is a really good quarterback in the 8 to 12 range on any given Sunday, but he's not proven that he can bring a team to the Super Bowl or deep in the playoffs. And if you pay a good quarterback, great quarterback money, you're at an inherent disadvantage. Obviously, you don't want to be stuck without a quarterback because it would be very hard to find somebody better than Dak. But again, in case this season does go poorly, I don't think it's a bad idea to just leave your options open. And maybe a deal does get done with Dak before the season begins. There has been some reports that the Cowboys are working hard to get one done, but if they can't come to an agreement before September, I really don't think it would be the worst thing in the world. But quickly back to the defense, I did want to touch on their new defensive coordinator in Mike Zimmer. The Cowboys defense ranked inside the top 10 the last 3 seasons with Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator. And while his unit did struggle in big spots and in the postseason, I do think he did a fairly good job and is one of the best defensive minds in the sport. So that is another question mark I have about this team, and if Mike Zimmer can continue to get some good production out of the defense. But ultimately, I do not see the Cowboys just completely bottoming out and being like a below 500 team next year. They've won 12 games for 3 straight seasons. They have star power all over the roster. If they don't suffer major injuries, I just don't see how they're not somewhat in the mix in January. But if this squad did not accomplish anything of significance last year, I don't know how they're going to do it this year with an even worse roster. And to make matters worse, there has not been a repeat division winner in the NFC East for 19 consecutive seasons. So it is looking like the Philadelphia Eagles year, who made numerous moves this offseason to really improve the roster and take over the division once again. But the pressure is on, and if Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy don't make the playoffs or even win at least one game next year in the postseason, I find it really hard to believe currently as we sit in the summertime that they both will be back in 2025 and for the near future. I know legendary coach Bill Belichick has been talked about as a potential replacement if things do go south for America's team next year. I don't know how realistic that would be or if Jerry Jones would want to hire somebody like Belichick to take over his team, but I'm going to pay close attention to this situation in the next 12 months because I do think things can get fairly interesting pretty quickly. But I want to know what you think about the Dallas Cowboys and their current situation and what you expect from them in 2024. Do you still think they have the roster talent to make some noise in the NFC? Or do you agree with me and think they might take a step back next year and have some big changes in the near future? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. But subscribe to the channel if you are new, drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.